1025, now it's estimated that eating disorders affect at least 1.25 million people in the UK, admissions doubling over the past decade. It can often be very difficult to know where to turn for support, and suicide prevention charity Ripple have recently launched their digital crisis intervention tool. So let's find out more from one of their advisory board members, Katie Maycock. Thanks so much for being with us, Katie. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Katie, can we just talk a little bit about your journey, I suppose, first, sort of growing up and your relationship with food and how you became poorly, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So sadly, I developed an eating disorder at the age of 15. And at that point in my life, there was so much going on. My parents had just split up. I just moved interstate. So this is when I was living back in Australia. And, I'd moved schools to three times. And so my life felt extremely chaotic. And I ended up developing an eating disorder just as a way to gain control from that. And it was something that, my life was out of control. And it was a way for me to feel like I was in control. And it went on for 7 years.
That's so interesting. I just wanted to pick up on that one little bit there, Katie, because I was chatting to a friend of mine who has eating distress, and she calls it distress because it has been so, terribly difficult to live with as opposed to disorder. And she talked about that because I think there are so many myths around it. People oversimplify it, thinking, everybody in the media is thin, so I want to be thin. And I'm not saying that doesn't affect people. Of course it does. But there is far more to it than that. And control is very often an issue, and it was for her.
I think that's a massive problem. A lot of people assume eating disorders, especially anorexia, because there's multiple different types of eating disorders, but I ended up having anorexia, is that it's the desire to be thin. No, that's just an outcome for what's going on inside. And it's a mental health issue. It is a physical health issue, but the physical health side of it is part of the mental health side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the control, which is what you were saying, everything was going on, and that was your way of control. Yeah. How bad did it get, and how difficult did it get? Because 7 years is a long time to be poorly.
Yeah. It got really, really bad. It was pretty dire, at one stage. I was very quiet about it. I grew up in a household where it was sort of like, don't rock the boat, let's not talk about it. Everyone, you could physically see that I was very, very, very unwell. My BMI was bottomed out. I was very, very skeletal at that point in time. And I think at the age of 18, 19, after about 3-4 years of, suffering from it, I asked for support. And unfortunately, I wasn't in their eyes sick enough to get support. And so it ended up being prolonged, I would say, for another few years until I could really get the help that I needed at the age of 22.
Yeah, and that's just awful, isn't it? Because the longer you're poorly, the more kind of deeper entrenched these things get in our mind, which is very, very difficult. What was the kind of, in terms of the treatment, what was the thing that switched things up for you and that made things better, if I can ask?
This is going to sound really bizarre because my story is a little bit different, but I actually went to university and did a degree in nutrition. And although I was quite sick during that degree, I started working as a nutritionist, and I woke up one day and I was like, I can't actually give support to people when I'm not even taking care of myself. I'm not nurturing myself. I'm not supporting myself. So for me, it was really that desire there. And then I ended up having to speak to a lot of people about it because I didn't understand that the thoughts in my head weren't true. And so once I was able to dissociate the thoughts that comes with eating disorders, that say really horrible things to you, until I was able to dissociate that, that's what really, really helped me and sort of went through that. And sadly, the treatment for me didn't come from, I was in Australia at the time, from the health services there, but it definitely came from all the support that I ended up having around at that time and going through sort of that degree and the support from that area.
And obviously now you have, lived experience. You can have absolute sympathy and empathy with people that you chat to. And these figures released by Ripple as part of Eating Disorder Awareness Week are pretty shocking, really. So I wonder, as somebody that has lived through it, what you felt about the figures.
It really upsets me, if I'm really honest. I think that, I had an eating disorder over 20 years ago. And the fact that we're seeing these figures increase, especially after COVID, these figures, I know it's the last decade, it dramatically increased, but COVID really spurred it on, and it really is devastating. And what is even more, like really more devastating, is when you can see that there's still pro-anorexia websites, there's still social media sites that are dedicated to keeping people unwell. And it's absolutely heartbreaking from my side.
Yeah, and absolutely extraordinary as well, might I say, that tech companies are not absolutely forced to take these down. I find that extraordinary as well.
Me too.
Yeah, devastating. So how is Ripple supporting people who are living with eating distress then? What's happening? And tell us about this digital crisis intervention tool.
So Ripple are incredible. So the founder is a lady called Alice Hendy, and it started off as suicide prevention. And when I met Alice a couple of years ago, she was like, we really want to extend it into eating disorders. So the way that it works is they have an intervention tool. So let's say someone's sitting on their computer and they're starting to look for potential dangerous key phrases or websites or anything like that. What Ripple are going to do, there's going to be a pop-up on the screen that's going to prevent more access to that website, but also an intervention tool saying, we can see that you're searching for dangerous phrases. Mm-hmm. Here are some additional supports, and it'll come up with things like Beat, which is another charity for eating disorders, to support family and friends and people who are suffering from it, as well as, Good Samaritans and all of those sort of links to get mental health support, which is really incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting what you said, and how we've mentioned this a couple of times, that it's not just about how you look. This is a mental health condition. Of course, it has physical ramifications, as do a lot of mental health problems. But this is about a mental health problem, and it's about getting the right therapy for that, and about kind of interrupting your thoughts, really. And there's a lot of crossovers between all sorts of different mental health conditions, and interrupting those thoughts and challenging those thoughts, whether it be with your cognitive behavioural therapy or any of those things. There is definite hope, isn't there, for somebody with an eating disorder? And I think that's very important for people listening to hear that.
Yes, there's absolute hope, and that's what I really like. You said something that's really interesting, is that's why I really like what Ripple are doing and why I'm so proud to be a part of the charity, which is it disrupts that thought. It disrupts that sort of going down that rabbit hole, and it allows you to see that there is hope, and there is so many people now talking about it. It's less taboo than it was, and I think that there is more support than there was 20 years ago. There was barely any support. There was barely anyone talking about eating disorders and anorexia and all the different areas. So it's really good to see that there is more hope. There's more people trying to get involved to prevent this horrendous illness.
If people want to find out more about Ripple, Katie, where can they go?
Definitely go to their website. So I'm just going to pull it up here because I think it's ripplesuicideprevention.org.
Yeah.
And then you can definitely go search for them on all the socials, because they're on all the socials as well. And they're doing a lot of really, really good work, not just in the eating disorder space, but on all different areas of mental and mental illness as well.
Yeah, and if they want to find you, Katie, you're the founder, and I shall be very careful how I say this, the BBC, of Get Your SH*T together. So we can find that and find you there, and learn more about you. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much for being a beacon of hope for lots of people going through this. Really appreciate your time, Katie. You take care.
Too. Thank you. Bye.